Morning, everyone, and welcome to the Talks and Show. Today, I have a very special guest out of the US, Isioma. Isioma, welcome to Dubai.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be back in Dubai.
Absolutely. It's been actually approximately a year when you were visiting us last, right?
That is so true. Yes, I think that's when we originally met.
Absolutely. So it's absolutely been a pleasure having you on the show. As I was explaining, basically this last week we're full of conferences from Wealth Arabia to the Alternative Investment Summit. So I've been running around left and right. But today, I'm getting this opportunity to meet with you and to talk a little bit what's going on in the US.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the US obviously has always been a ground where a lot of startups and growth companies have come out of. Could you let us know what's going on? What kind of trends are you seeing right now out of there?
I think I keep a really watchful eye on the fintech space. So we are seeing a lot of innovation in how these fintechs are adapting to the needs of consumers. So consumers are looking for more information and insight on their banking accounts, looking for more direction on how they should be spending, especially the millennial generation. So we're seeing fintechs finding ways to make it easier for consumers to pay, finding ways for consumers to have a better understanding of what's going on in their bank accounts, what should they be doing to save more, what should they be doing to figure out how they can get to the point that they can even invest.
Got it. So, coming back to payments, so, are you saying that there are competitors to a Stripe, to a PayPal coming up? Is this basically what you're seeing right now?
I would definitely say so. I think we've been seeing the launch or announcements of Google Pay. We've been seeing the announcements of Amazon Pay. Even the fact that Apple is going to have a credit card that's backed by, I believe it was JP Morgan, but don't quote me. I need to check.
Got it. So these big tech companies, or as I like to call it, tech fin companies, are kind of going into the payment space and disrupting it in another level.
Yes.
That's what you're seeing. And this is basically very, very interesting because the bigger players who are out of there, we have the Visas and the MasterCards out of there who are companies which we trust and have been doing long time business. But here, these big tech companies who've got all the data.
Yeah.
And, you and I both talk about data being the new oil as we go forward. This is something, very, very interesting to see that these big giants are going to are entering the market because that's the correct, right? They're entering the market with their own products, with a Google Pay, with a Apple Pay, but their own credit card banked by a correspondent bank at the back to making it happen. So I think this is big news which is coming into the US.
Yeah.
So payments is something definitely these guys are looking at. And I just want to say, how do you make the bridge then for these smaller companies, right? Let's say I would be a small fintech company who doesn't have, got some innovative ideas, right? I like to bring social media and payments together on one platform, right? I don't have the user base.
Right.
But I have this great idea which, enables basically this payment gateway because we are both on the same social media platform using that. So, as you know, in the beginning or earlier this year, there was a big noise basically from Facebook with its Libra coin coming out. So that brought a lot of news, and now we can see that association is a little bit under fire. Capitol Hill is definitely trying to do something out of there, but more importantly, if I'm a small startup and do not have actually the data to feed it or the network to feed it, how I'm going to compete against Google or for that matter Apple, who have got really millions and millions of users.
Absolutely. I think that's been the question for any startup that's going into any space. It's not specific to payments, but I would say figuring out what partnerships they can leverage. So banks have been backing fintechs for a long time. They may have been the grounds for innovation there, and then the fintech may have gone on to grow on their own. So I think there's still an opportunity there. I think banks have had the best historical data of what's happening in the payment space, what's happening within our bank accounts, how we've grown within the financial sector and our finances. So I think there's opportunity there. And of course, to your point, social media is also a good way to understand what are people looking into, what are they interested in, and how can I create a niche space for myself first and then grow beyond that to maybe compete one day with a Google or an Apple Pay.
Absolutely. So, I mean, one of the things I always talk about is the fact that, the real currency of the future
Absolutely.
is attention.
Yeah.
So, we can talk about, it's going to be BTC or something else. Right. I don't have a problem with it, but if you look at it, the conversions in the end happens where the attention is.
Absolutely.
Right? Today it might be Facebook, tomorrow it might be Instagram, but we don't know how it's going to roll going forward.
Absolutely.
Every day I check my Gmail account. 100%, right? Every day I check my WhatsApp, 100%. I mean, the first thing I wake up, I check my WhatsApp. So, having said that, and I'm not the representative of what's going on in the world, but, I am definitely addicted to my phone.
Yeah.
Is the fact that, how do you think this, this digital revolution which is going on will enhance basically the way we do business today?
I think so. I think the smartest fintechs or companies in general are figuring out where are consumers focusing already, and then how do they plug into that, or where is the problem and how do they simplify it. So to your point, you check WhatsApp every day, you check your Gmail every day. How are you integrating your solution into your daily routine? You might be a person that drinks coffee every morning. Are you finding a way to simplify paying for coffee, getting it delivered? So I think those are the ways that good fintechs are going to figure out how to get good attention. And then obviously leveraging social media as well. I think one thing that's been interesting is a fintech based out of Europe and New York. It's called Capital. They've gamified the way that we save, the way that we spend. And they've been doing a really good job of keeping people's interest and attention that way.
Got it. So, one of the things, I don't know if you remember this game, it's called Farmville. It used to be on Facebook.
Okay.
And you're basically a farmer trying to grow your own veggies. And from there,
everyone playing that, yes.
That was like the biggest thing ever, and it was addictive like anything.
Right.
But more importantly is the fact that it got my attention and hooked to that platform called Facebook, basically, because of that game called Farmville. Anything there was some spare time, I would play Farmville.
Yeah.
So gamification is something definitely which engages people going forward. There are big gaming communities around the world which have their own virtual kind of currency going on, because in the end it's not about the real money, it's about the fact that we as a team have performed against this team and we've won or lost or whatever it is, and going forward.
Yeah.
So that is something, gamification is something definitely which is going to revolutionize going forward because it attracts that attention.
Absolutely.
At the same time, I want to talk about open banking. So open banking is something which is also very much trending. Open banking, for you guys, just to give a little bit brief, is the fact that you extract basically your information, your banking information, where you bought your gasoline, where you bought your coffee, and from there basically able to create a data and say, hey, Prim, on entertainment you have spent 70% of your last income, and on 30% you have done on groceries and household things. So it would be wiser to do otherwise, and then maybe come up with a recommendation to do some investments.
Right.
So obviously that's a whole train which is happening. What do you see happening in this space, basically, open banking?
Well, I'm curious to see what fintechs are going to be able to utilize it the most. So I know that open banking has been really big in Europe, that they've been, I don't know if legislated is the word for it, but it's been bigger in Europe than in the US, that I've heard more about it. So I'm curious to see what fintechs are going to utilize that data from the banks and then grow their consumer offerings from there.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting part basically because that data has been stored out of there, and banks having legacy systems have not been able to utilize it because, every time you go for credit, for example, I want to buy a new car, you have to do a brand new application.
Right.
Which is like quite annoying.
Yes.
I mean, dear bank, you know me. I've been banking for the last 12 years. You know every step of every purchase I've done. And at the same time, you're going to ask me, okay, can you get from your employer a letter written that you've been employed with us for the last, and there's a contract which is there, so don't worry, this guy is safe to invest in. It's actually ridiculous.
Yeah.
But in a way, they have been working in silos, I feel. And what maybe this open banking might help is to extract this data and converse very easily and open up the market for them to go forward. So the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is something called the riches are in the niches.
Okay,
all right.
Interesting.
So we are here in Dubai, right? So this is a place where Islamic finance is quite big, or is promoted a lot. So you have something called the sukuk. Sukuk is basically a Sharia compliant bond, or can be actually anything. Could be also equity actually. But the fact is that if you look in this region, for example, in the Middle East, they're looking at financial products. Right? I mean, I can buy a bond, or I can buy equity or shares in a company, but more importantly, it should be Sharia compliant, so that you build a platform specifically for people who say, hey, I want to invest in this because I know it's done according to a specific way to making it happen. And this is very region specific, I would say. I mean, if you look at sukuks in general, Malaysia is a big playing ground. Here in the Middle East and Saudi Arabia is a big playing ground. But, I would imagine that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that US is not a big player right now into sukuks or in Sharia compliant kind of things. But having said that, the riches are in the niches, meaning that in fact, if you look into a niche market, it is possible basically to make, because there are bigger margins to be made than versus going into payments where the margins are bigger. It's a game that, okay, you can do it at 2 cents, I can do it at 1 cent, we can do it at half cent, and it's that kind of game, and it's who creates then the volumes dominates the market. But more importantly, here this margins are bigger because it's a niche.
Right.
Is there something in the US you see happening in this niche market?
Specifically in the sukuk market?
Sukuk, for example.
Specifically in the sukuk market, no.
Good.
I might have to think about that one.
No,
I might have to think about that one.
No. So I mean, it is what it is, right? I mean, investors nowadays, right, also look at impact investing.
That is true.
Or ECG, right? I mean, we all have our own responsibility, and everybody likes to have something with solar panels in their portfolio because that's trending. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the fact is that we understand that planet Earth, as we are living on, is got its own resources. And we are kind of, looking at alternative resources to fuel it when it comes to water consumption, or for that matter, looking at how electricity can be done. So again, that's also a niche market. Can you see something like that also happening in the US when it comes to impact investing or ECG going forward?
Yeah, I think especially impact investing, it's been growing just because we're seeing a lot more people who are rallying around it. So I think if anything, those markets, while they do start off as niche, because you have people who are so committed to the cause and become promoters of it themselves, I think it's a great way for it to actually eventually grow maybe into a main market player as a place for everyone to be involved in, because those people who originally started with it become the promoters and explain why this might be better for someone else's portfolio.
So just to get my psychology right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we just talked about payments
Mm-hmm.
and open banking, where basically these fintechs are competing with each other
Mm-hmm.
to fight for that 1 cent or half a cent cheaper kind of transaction fees going forward. And whoever got the volume is doing that.
Right.
Now, with impact investing, because it's kind of like a greenfield right now, there is huge opportunity, I feel, that if you take out a fintech company or a tech company which is specialized in this part of the niche market, you have got a bigger potential, because then a bigger company might come, I'm saying a big pension fund might come and say, hey guys, I like what you guys are doing, we want to implement it on our portfolios.
Right.
Buy.
Yes.
Right? I mean, for a fintech, there are basically two things. You get bought by a bigger fish, or you become the bigger fish.
Exactly. That is it, yeah.
These are the two things.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is, especially when you're working in the B2C market, in the business to consumer market, you need to have users.
Yeah.
Right? And when you come to a B2B, then the bigger fish will, say, okay, man, looks good. Let's do a marriage and continue basically our activities together.
Yeah.
So that is something which I'm seeing a lot, that, people are doing what the mainstream is doing, or you look for that niche market, which is going to, let's say it start trending tomorrow in the US. And why I talk so much about the US is basically for the fact that the biggest capital markets are in the US. And for that matter is that the question remains that, if in the US something like sukuks or impact investing becomes a hot item, it can really roll very, very well, because we are talking about it. This is something which is very much present out up here. So I see a lot of startups basically which are in this sukuk market, and I was like, hey, I need to educate myself on this, because what is this, and why would investors look into it, and then see if it rolls. And right now, this is the region here in Dubai and Saudi Arabia and in Malaysia, as I mentioned, where this sukuk has got real ground to take. But maybe it can be a worldwide thing, and for that matter, impact investing in general might be taking off going forward.
Absolutely, I don't see why not.
All right, so after Dubai, what's your next stop?
I will be back in Atlanta and then DC for a little bit. So those are my stops next.
All right, so Atlanta and DC. So anything, year end is coming, right? Thanksgiving is around the corner. US is slowing down and it's going to, we're going to see what's going to happen, obviously. But more importantly is the fact that Christmas season is starting.
That is.
So any predictions for 2020 going forward?
No predictions for 2020. Obviously, whoever utilizes data the best will end up being the biggest winner in the next decade. But I am curious to see what volumes look like for the holiday shopping season this year. When it comes to fraud reduction, or just being able to handle the amount of online shopping the consumers are going to be doing on Cyber Monday.
Yeah. So I was very much interested, just to see what's going on in the US, because I'm a little bit detached from that market right now. You mentioned also that the economy, people are spending money.
People are spending.
So in the US, there's no sign of any slowdown in the economy going forward as of now.
Right.
So it's going to be this holiday season, again, a record-breaking spending free, or are the people just going to retract a little bit and wait? So with the numbers we will see, based most probably by the end of December or beginning of January, how that season has been. Are you looking forward for Black Friday and Cyber Monday?
Definitely Cyber Monday. Luckily I've been able to avoid going into the stores as much as possible, but I'm definitely excited about Cyber Monday as always.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming and visiting us at our offices. I really appreciate you coming over. I hope you had a splendid time out up here in Dubai.
Yes.
And next time you're over, please join us again, and we'll talk about what's going on in the US market again.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.